case you missed it, it's the top 5 sports talkers of the day. Now, it's time for Dan Barreiro's Top 5 at 5. Brought to you by Gutter Helmet of Minnesota. Never clean your gutters again. Learn more at gutterhelmetmn.com.
All right, Guardsy out today. I'm out tomorrow. I think he's back, and then he's out Thursday, Friday, right? You're on with me?
So I'm
Thursday,
on
Friday?
the rest
You're
of the
straight
week.
through the rest of the week. Exactly right. Where would you like to start today's top 5?
Oh, where else?
Time now for the obligatory Kevin Fallness Minnesota Wild mention.
Does that get used when I'm gone? Probably not.
No, it's just you.
Guardsy doesn't care.
Guardsy doesn't care. Anything he can do to annoy Fallness, he's going to do it. So he's less likely than you to use it.
Yeah, fair enough. The Wild, they get the Lightning to pretty good squads. The Lightning, no pushovers. Here's the recap for the injury report as it stands now.
Okay.
Foligno, the Moose, considered week to week. It's not season ending, but he's seeing another doctor, that via Joe Smith. Brodin expected to play tonight. We're happy about that. Gus Bus is in net for your Wild. That's a late one. You'll hear it right here on the Fan. 8:30.
That's too late.
Is the puck drop. Well, you want to be on national TV or not?
Yeah, that's true.
You know?
But then I'm going to get sleep shamed because I'll probably have the teeth in the glass by 10:15.
Yeah.
So there you go. Whatever.
By the way, the one going back to this, the girl in Vegas that's 38 that's getting sleep shamed.
Yeah.
Her friends need to grow up. You're 38 years old.
Yeah.
I want to go to bed. I'm 29 and I want to go to bed.
Is it because she lives in Vegas and the assumption is that
Must
you have
be.
to be on a different schedule or there's no point in living in Vegas? I don't know. Not a great Vegas mind at this point. Been many years since I have traveled there.
Also, if you're wondering, the lines Hartman, Kaprizov, Zook. You see the normal second line of Ekboldi, Johansson, and then you've got Fabry making his debut. And Hughes
how
is
do you
back
feel
from
about that? I mean, Louis seemed to like it okay, but there's a couple people texting who think it might change. It's a sneaky move that might change everything. How do you view it?
I'm whelmed. That's how I describe it.
Whelmed, okay.
I'm not overwhelmed.
Okay.
I'm not underwhelmed. It's fine. He's going to play with Sturm and Hinestroza.
You got nothing to lose.
Yeah,
throw it out there. Throw him out there. See what happens.
Exactly.
Okay. And you said Gus Bus in the net, right?
That's what I'm seeing.
Okay.
Yes. So we got that going for us. You'll hear it right here on the Fan. What you'll hear on the Timberwolves channel is the Timberwolves taking on the Grizz tonight at home. That's at 7. But some late breaking injury news as they updated the injury report. This was about 20 minutes ago. Ant is now questionable with listed as right foot injury maintenance for tonight.
Well, that's the foot.
I don't know what that means.
I think that's the foot that he's had a kind of a chronic issue with.
Correct.
I'm pretty sure. I think that's what it is. We're playing the Grizz, correct?
Yes.
They're not very good, I don't think. In fact, I'm looking them up as we speak here. Hold on one second. I thought I had the standings called up. 23 and 36. They're in the 11th spot. I don't even know. Are they tanking irresponsibly? Do they want to tank? I don't even know if they have their pick, to tell you the truth.
If you're below 500, it can be assumed that you're tanking.
That's probably true. Sad but true. But this falls under the classification. You got 3 games in a row here where you should win them all. Certainly win 2 of them, but I think you need to pretty much get greedy. Now, if Edwards doesn't play, obviously that changes some things. We'll see how that goes. So, questionable always for me feels like 50-50.
Yeah.
And I don't, Edwards has missed more games this year than I think he's probably missed his entire career. And I don't think it's load management. I think he's just been a little bit more banged up, and some of it has kind of caught up to him. We confirmed yesterday, Julius Randle has not missed a game this season. Now you could say, well, how do you mean, Dan? Because there have been a few games he played and it appeared that he missed them. But he has been very durable. They've got a pretty durable club, for the most part. If Rudy misses time, it's because he has one too many flagrants. It's more that than it is injury. Jaden ends up usually plays. DiVincenzo plays. They got a lot of guys who play a lot. And obviously, if Edwards is out, not very helpful, but still certainly should be able to win even without him, I would think.
This is a key game, it feels like, where the Wolves potentially sleepwalk because, it's a bad team at home.
Yes.
And it would be classic Wolves, so hopefully they don't do that tonight. The big story of the day is Kyler Murray. The Cardinals informed him that they're releasing him, barring a trade before the start of the league year. I've already seen tweets. Here's one from Robert Smith, our new QB.
Oh, is that what he said?
I think Meat Sauce has tweeted about 16 times about how much he's excited for Kyler to come here. It seems like that's what we're looking for. That's where we're at. That's Vikings football.
I might, and again, I'll admit this. I might be too bored with it. There might be more there than I'm giving him credit for. He's one of those quarterbacks who's somehow gotten on my bad side, and sometimes that's fair, and sometimes it's just you just do some projecting, and you end up making him appear worse than he really is. He doesn't excite me. He probably does excite me more than Geno Smith would. I'll say that, for whatever that's worth. I don't know. I haven't sensed a lot of stability there. I'm still not convinced. I know, Seifert said he makes a lot of the throws that KOC likes, but I also think he's more mobile in a way that I'm not sure KOC completely understands. Now, he's little, so obviously you don't want him getting killed. You'd have to be smart about it, but I hope it doesn't come down to that. But, obviously every day that goes by makes it feel like the Aaron Rodgers dream that I have is disappearing. I still think, as I said earlier, and maybe here's what we'll do. We got a guest at 5:30, so there is another Viking story, definitely worth covering, that we got into during the first hour that is not quarterback related, that I don't really think makes this organization look very good at this point, even if what is being done or being suggested might be done was a necessity on the basis of the way things had been mishandled when it comes to money, salary cap, etc. But the Murray story is definitely worth discussing because he's now going to be available next week. That's basically all but official at this point, and you're going to be able to get him probably cheap. You're going to be able to get him on a decent contract, and he has started games in the National Football League. I do think he's viewed as good enough when he has played or established enough that if you sign him, he's going to start. And I don't think there could be much pretense about that. No matter what takes place in training camp, to me, you're not going to bring him in to I'd be shocked if they're bringing him in to compete for the job. So we'll see. The good news is, I think we're gonna have a lot of this resolved pretty quickly. I really do think in throughout the next 2 or 3 weeks. I think we're going to know exactly what they have in mind at the quarterback position.
He may not be available. If it were me, I'd move heaven and earth to get Burrow, and after that, you're on your own.
Yeah, but that might not even be a possibility.
It probably isn't.
Who is the defensive sack specialist that the Bengals have? What's his name?
Hendrickson. Yeah,
Hendrickson. I think the decision's been made. They're not franchising him.
Yeah, I think he's on his way out.
That came up in a couple of texts, like, all right, well, maybe that's something that we're going to try to sniff around. I have absolutely no idea. That would be, of course, enormous money. And again, we're way over the cap, which we'll discuss in more depth next segment as it pertains to another player who we thought was a pretty important part of this team.
What was your favorite Drew Dahlman moment for your Chicago Bears?
Yeah.
He's 2 years younger than me, and he's calling it a career. I can only imagine I haven't read his reasoning behind it. I can only imagine it's health related, which stinks. You're on the O-line. You're a center. You're probably getting
He was their big acquisition last season.
He signed last year. He signed a 3-year, $42 million deal with the Bears. He was a big reason why that O-line was so good.
It was much improved.
And there he goes. So Drew Dahlman retiring at 27, 5 seasons in the NFL, and that's a big hole for the Bears.
That's a massive hole. And speaking of centers, the Vikings don't have one either. No reason to believe that we do. That's another thing that has to be, discussed that doesn't get as much attention as the quarterback position. And we all know how important it is in the interior part of the line. And because of our guys' concussion issues, who we just signed, the Vikings, just like the Bears, need to find yet another center. Yet again, that's 2 straight years for both teams. If there are going to be significant changes at the center position, I don't think they grow on trees. So that's going to be a very sneaky, crucial move involving this division, the Bears as well as the Vikings.
Lastly, I'm not going to make this Atlanta Braves fan line, but are you familiar with the player Jurickson Profar?
No.
Is his name. He's 33. The Braves signed him a couple years ago. Last year, He got suspended half the season for PEDs, and he just got popped again for PEDs. He's facing a 162-game suspension after testing positive. First of all, either fool me once, shame on me, fool me twice.
Yeah.
How do you get caught twice?
I don't know.
How do you get suspended a half year and think, you know what I'm going to do?
Just do it again.
Do it
Double
again.
down on it.
Last year he said, quote, "is because of my deep love and respect for the game that I would never knowingly do anything to cheat on it." And here we are again.
Wow.
So yeah.
Well, here's my question. Has there ever been an occasion where an entire team has been suspended for 162 games? Because you could argue that we wouldn't really be that devastated if that's exactly what happened to your favorite baseball team, the Minnesota Twins. By the way, Kyler Murray was drafted as a baseball player, I think, by the formerly known as Oakland A's. So I think it was Gleeman mentioned perhaps the Twins can get him on the cheap, just as is expected. The Vikings would be able to get Kyler Murray on the cheap, and we could have him play for both of our local teams as well. Let's talk a little bit more Vikings when we come back, and then we'll go A section. Some very juicy, controversial stuff playing out in the courthouse in the Twin Cities of Minneapolis and St. Paul. Paul Blume will take us through all of it when he joins at 5:30.
If you want to chime in what's happening with your favorite KFAN show, you can. It's very easy. You can make your voice heard on the Bradshaw and Bryant KFAN text line. Here's what you do. You let us know what you have to say by texting your message to 64686. That's 64686. Standard text message and data rates apply.
Beers, ha ha ha, United face.
Whoa. That was more dramatic than I thought it was going to be.
I didn't realize that ended any of that music. Sorry about that. Very emotional right now. Let me get some coffee. Could use water, actually. But update regarding the guest lineup might be delayed on getting intrepid Fox 9 reporter Paul Blume, because I think the case he's been covering all day, at least as of the top of the hour, was ongoing in a courtroom. And as soon as we get more information, we'll pass it along to you, and we'll hopefully get him at some point, because what he's covering is pretty big. Bradshaw and Bryant KFAN text line is open at 64686. I had one other Vikings item I did want to at least discuss. It's not as sexy as the ongoing quarterback speculation and the possibility of now the door being open to Kyler Murray coming here. And we always assume here because we think the whole NFL revolves around us. It doesn't, but that's the way we like to think here. And there may be some other places that have interest in Kyler Murray and are looking for a QB, and that might even be willing to spend a little bit more money to convince him to go to them as opposed to someplace else. But the news broke earlier today that it appears the Vikings are having some difficulty moving forward with Jonathan Grenard. And when I first heard the name, I thought it might have been a typo of some sort or a misunderstanding, because everything that I'd been had been told was that even though his numbers weren't as good last year as the year before, Grenard is still a guy in his prime. Look up his age. I think he's like 28. And considered an important player in this team. He's 28 years old. And he's due to make only $19 million in each of the next 2 seasons. That's $38 million total. I think the cap number might be a little bit higher for the upcoming season. But the reporting indicates that one or two things is going on here. One is the Vikings are just so hopelessly screwed up with the cap that unless they can convince him to get on a more salary cap friendly deal in terms of the yearly outlay against the cap, that they might have to move him. The assumption is that they would want a second-round choice to move him because he is in his prime. And on the other hand, is it possible that what Grenard's people are saying is, look, I know his numbers weren't great last year, but my client is vastly underpriced at $19 million, given, I think, the most expensive edge rusher. Isn't it your guy, Micah? And that's $40 million. So it could be one or either of those things that are involved here. But none of it, to me, is a good look at all for the Vikings. Again, because we come to expect year after year, aging players, injury-prone players have to make adjustments. We can't keep paying them the same money. The salary cap hit is too much. But when a guy is 28 years old, in his prime, still considered a good edge rusher and a pretty valuable member of your club, and you apparently have boxed yourself into a position where you have no choice but to still consider trading him away, I'm not excited if it's a second-round draft choice. Obviously, it's better than nothing, but the fact is there's no guarantee the second-round pick is ever going to be as good as what Jonathan Grenard has already been for you. And I'm not saying he's a top 5 edge rusher, but as Seifert said, he's probably a top 10. So to me, all of it should be concerning to Vikings fans that's the position they're in. It's one thing, as I said, to have to make tough decisions, cold calculating decisions on aging players that aren't as important to you, or their number has just gone up too high. When it's an in the prime player, who, by the way, you basically traded him for Danielle Hunter. Hunter was brilliant last year. It's not a good look for your club. It is a very concerning look, and it probably further indicts the previous administration about how reckless and irresponsible they were to be in this position. I asked Seifert whether what we're seeing here is that the Vikings made a decision to be more likely to stick to T.J. Hawkinson, another high-salaried guy, or Grenard, and he said, I don't know if it's that simple, because we don't know. Behind the scenes, there may be stuff going on with Hawkinson right now where he knows he's going to have to take less money. But I got to tell you, if I'm asked who I would rather, I can only have one of these two guys in the team, and the choices are Grenard or Hawkinson, I'm picking Grenard. Not because I love him, and I know we got Dallas Turner behind him, I get that, but because I just don't think at this point Hawkinson, he has not impressed me that much. Now, I guess you have to factor in, is that his fault, or is it, again, the problems at the quarterback position that made it difficult for you to get the most out of what he had, still might have to offer? I don't know. But when you're in such salary cap hell that you have to start messing with, in your prime, popular key members of your, in this case, defense, not a good sign for the current condition of the club. And then drafting well immediately is no longer just a maybe. It's almost a you're saying it's a prerequisite. You have to be great in your drafting from the beginning. And I still don't think it makes sense to turn your back on a pretty good player. Now, maybe you get a haul. Maybe you got some other larger goal out there that you've already worked out. Somebody else you're going to be able, you think, to get along the defensive line, whether it's via free agency or trade or perhaps even the draft. But again, There are no guarantees in the draft. Having a high pick sounds good until you attach the name to a player. And if the player isn't great or doesn't turn out to be great or needs a lot of time to be good, then you're back to, I'd rather have the proven player who in this case, again, is not aging and is in his prime. So we'll see where that goes. It's definitely worth keeping an eye on. It's still also possible they could come to terms. There may be some creative way out of the box. Maybe this is part of the posturing that's gone so public so early. But it almost sounds to me like it's the most likely scenario is Grenard says, I know my numbers weren't great, but my sack rate, I should say pressure rate, was actually better than it was the year before. Still very good. Within top 10 in the league. Therefore, I'm underpaid when I look at some of these other contracts. I don't expect to be paid like Micah Parsons, but I'm making half that this year, and the going rate is much higher than the $19 million that the Vikings were supposed to pay him. And the fact that we can't even pay him that's big time salary cap mismanagement for sure, if indeed you're left with no other choice. Bottom of the hour break. We'll keep you posted on our effort to get Blume on the program before we wrap it up at 6:30 and what's turning into a very, very busy day. But we'll see how it goes. In fact, we may end up getting him after his hit on the 6 o'clock news. We'll give you some details on what he's covering today if you're curious or have not heard. And we'll have a chance maybe to get back to our sleep shaming discussion and a couple of other stories as well when we return. Stay tuned.
Miss your chance to know what the latest sports news is in town, chances to win tickets, or just knowing what's going on with your favorite KFAN shows? You can follow The Fan, KFAN 1003, on all of our social channels like Instagram, TikTok, and X. You can stay connected to the sports leader, The Fan.
The plan is to chat with Paul Blume, but it might end up being after 6 o'clock today. We'll see if it's possible because he's got a lot of significant Fox 9 duties to get to. And let me kind of reintroduce the subject a little bit regarding what he has, what he's been covering. If you go back to the beginning, he as the day began, much earlier today, a good 6 hours ago, U.S. Attorney Daniel Rosen was in court defending his office and ICE from potential civil and or criminal contempt findings for violating court orders in 20-plus cases, specifically regarding the return of personal property to previously detained immigrants. And he's got a long thread. This doesn't involve our guy, Judge Schultz. This involves Judge Jeffrey Bryan. And early, it got so ugly that the judge said to Rosen, I have not ruled out the consequence of imprisonment. Judge going on to say that that's unlikely, doesn't want to do it, but that all outcomes are on the table. Testy back and forth, outlining arguments for today's hearing over the first 20 minutes. Then there was there've been a couple recesses in this case. The hearing resumed, the contempt hearing resumed, I want to say, about 3 hours ago, a little bit more than that. And, I mean, it's been extremely tense, apparently, in a number of the exchanges and the debate that has broken out. So part of the reason he's delayed is that, as I said, it's been ongoing pretty much all day. So I'd love to hear from him to sort of distill the cases, the back and forth, and also ultimately if there's any ruling this afternoon as well, that would be helpful. So that's what Blume has, and others, but Blume, for our purposes, has been as I said, has been covering for much of the day. And I'm trying to find the most recent. Let me see if I can find the most recent Blume. This was from 41 minutes ago. Rosen has just been sworn in as a witness in this contempt hearing, asked to say and spell his name, and is now answering questions from Judge Jeffrey Bryan under oath. So, for all I know, he may still be taking questions. I'm not exactly sure. There's nothing newer from Blume than that. But we've seen this a couple times. We've seen this with Schultz. And this is pretty unusual stuff, which again speaks to just how badly a lot of these cases has been bungled. I said this a couple times to the folks who are on the side of the president and his administration. By God, this is what he pledged to do, and this is what he's got to do, and we got to take out all the illegal immigrants as much as possible, whether they've committed crimes or not. If you believe that, you should be angrier than anybody else that clearly the Trump forces did not put in place the infrastructure to give themselves a chance to pay off on all these quotas, leaving aside the impropriety and the illegality of some of what they were doing. But if you're going to do it, you got to do it where you've got people in place, and the system they were not prepared to get this done, and that's been part of the complaint about the judges, because these are people's lives who have been adversely affected, families adversely affected as well. So we'll see where that goes. That would be, I think, part of the discussion. Dan, you're no doubt right. You're correct on Grenard and Hawkinson as opposed to one or the other. Dan, why is everyone so excited for Kyler Murray if Arizona can't even trade him and they have to flat out release him? I'm not. I'm not that excited. This was the trade part of it, though, is the financial part. You're not, even if there are teams interested in Murray, they're not going to trade for him to get ahead of it, to actually, have exclusivity because of the financial ramifications of doing it. That doesn't necessarily mean they don't value him. It has more to do with the money. I still don't know. Maybe I don't value him as much as I should. I'm not sure. This is from 651 guy. Dan has no clue what he's talking about regarding Grenard. We signed him for a great price. He has a bad year and wants a raise, and you're making fun of the Vikings. Well, I can deconstruct what you're saying on about 5 levels, but I'll leave it at 3. Let's say, for the sake of argument, again, that you believe it is absurd that Grenard, if indeed he's asking for a raise, which some have reported, not all, that you think it's absurd that after a year he had, which again in terms of sacks wasn't great, but analytically in terms of pressure rate was still actually pretty good, is ridiculous. That makes no sense that you should have to tolerate that. Let's say I agree with you. But the fact is, you still got to replace him. And you still have to, and for me, it's not enough to just Dallas Turner like that. You with a flick of the wrist, everything's fine. With a snap of the fingers, I don't think that's necessarily true at all on Turner. And the point is, if you've invested in Grenard to the degree you have, you did so because he's still 28 years old. Regardless of whether he did not perform as productively start to finish last year as he did the year before, if you give up on him or have to concede and trade him, you still lose because you have to replace him. So you can get on your high horse and say, "Oh, it's preposterous. Why are the Vikings why should the Vikings consider giving him more money?" You don't have to. But again, as I pointed out to the texter, he's at $19 million for the upcoming season. That's not even close. The average of the top 10 edge rushers for 2026 was $28 million. So let's say he wants to go from 19, to 25 or maybe to 28. You could say, well, after that season, why should he be rewarded? And I'd say, you can cut your nose to spite your face, but the fact is, you've invested in him. You decided the way to go was to let Daniil go, and then basically in return, you're going to get Grenard. So you clearly thought you had something in him. And if you don't have him, you still have to replace him. You can feel good about yourselves that, by God, we didn't give in to him because we shouldn't give him more money. But that leaves out so much of the story that I don't think you're doing your homework if you can't understand, again, where he is financially. And I'll say again, they should not be in a position. It's another sign of how poorly run this team has been recently, that they're in a position where they can't afford not a 33-year-old defensive lineman, a 28-year-old defensive lineman who they once upon a time loved, who is extremely respected in the building, considered one of the team leaders. And at this point, you're in such salary cap hell. You not only have to move on guys like Javon Hargrave and Aaron Jones, which I think is logical, but even on a guy like this, you failed. You've already failed, regardless of whether you think that he's being too demanding about what he is offering. It just doesn't make any sense to me. Now, somebody did email this earlier. Don't you have $100 million in two players?
Ish. I think it's, I know
okay,
what they're
in that range?
I think it's like 90, 95.
So how do you not have any cap issues? Well, that'll be like in 2 years that the chickens will come home to roost? It's just the timing? Or how is it that you don't seem to be any kind of salary cap hell compared to the Vikings, who have to worry about the possibility of keeping one of their main defensive players from a year ago?
Oh, I feel like, they've got a lot of drafted players that they're playing offensively that are not paying a lot of money to. Almost all the wide receivers that they have.
Okay.
But also, they're just straight getting rid of guys. Like, I want to say it's Jenkins, who they're just going to let walk. They're going to let Romeo Doubs walk, probably. So, basically, when it comes to any point where it's time to pay up, they're just not going to do it, and they'd rather go the young way. But in doing that, you've got to draft well. And for the most part, Green Bay has. They haven't hit on a corner since Jair, probably. So, it's not perfect, but
right.
Yeah, they do. I think the Micah thing will cost them 3 years, 2-3 years from now. That's when the cap hit starts.
That's a good point. Yeah. So it may be they'll get there, but they're not there right now.
I mean, Green Bay's, in order for this move to work, Green Bay's got to win the big game in the next 2 to 3 years. Because after that,
that's true. That's a good way to look at it.
Love is going to be in his 30s at that point, which is still, you can be a serviceable quarterback until your mid-40s, the fan has learned.
Correct.
But still, you're going to have to pay him. And so, and Micah's not going to be Micah forever. So you got to win the big game the next 2 to 3 years.
That seems fair. And I guess you could say that's always, that's sort of always the way that this thing goes, right? Is that you have to strike at a certain point. It's sort of the nature of the game, knowing that sooner or later, it's just the nature of the system that it'll probably catch up with you, but that's exactly what you have to do. By the way, today I noticed also now that we have a little bit of time here, I'm trying to scroll to the correct place here. A Republican senator from North Carolina, Tom Tillis, had your gal, Kristi Noem, on the stand today, and apparently it wasn't pretty. Tillis called for Noem to leave her post. What we've seen under you is a disaster. Under your leadership, Ms. Noem, a disaster. He went on to be very front and center and vocal about the way ICE took over this town, and in a large degree, terrorized the town. And again, this is a Republican. Now, he's not been afraid to criticize in the past, but he was very specific and I thought very effective in that regard as well. I'm sure it's a subject that Special K might get into tomorrow as well. Bradshaw and Brian KFAN text line is 64686. Now, somebody is also reminding us that Kyler Murray, if you go back to 2024, his QBR, if you care about that rating, and I've sometimes respected it, sometimes not so much, but it's so hard to know which one really is the one that matters. But he finished, I believe, 9th in QBR in 2024. A number of his stats are okay. the record hasn't been. Again, how much is that? It's always the age-old question, right? If you get a quarterback like Murray who becomes available, the mystery that has to be solved, and this is where you have to trust your instincts and you have to trust, I guess, your ability to evaluate. Is it he elevated the team beyond what it was really capable of, just playing 500 football, largely throughout his career? Or was he not good enough to elevate them, and were they not as bad as a lot of people thought? That's basically what this comes down to. If you come to the conclusion that he didn't really have much, and to the extent that they were competitive, he's the guy who helped them be competitive, and all he needs is better infrastructure around him, then I guess you have to throw him into the mix. I just have not been all that impressed with what he has done. I know there's the stories behind the scenes about work ethic. I don't know how true they are. That became kind of a talking point. May have been fair to him, maybe not. But I just never felt like I never left long stretches of watching him and say, that's a winning quarterback. If you just get him in the right situation, he could make pretty plays. But I guess over the years, I have tried to learn to look past that, as odd as it sounds. Because pretty plays can deceive you. Like, whoa, who else can do that? Well, he made something out of nothing there. I'm far more interested in consistency and just making the right play, making the fundamentally sound play. And I just didn't sense that appeal to him all that much. And I guess I'm still not convinced that he's the greatest fit at the quarterback position for this particular quarterback whisperer. But again, if the Vikings do their due diligence and they're right, you could hit the mother load with him, right? And again, you're probably going to be able to get him on a 1-year contract, which is going to be cheap. It's going to be like a Russell Wilson sort of situation. And although that might be an analogy Vikings fans don't like because that didn't work out all that well in Denver, but I think that's why allegedly you pay these guys the big bucks. They have to they have to be able to project and look past whatever the rest of us on the outside look at and say, no. We get them here in our situation. It can at least be good. But I just have not. I just don't feel that interested in investing in him. And I know it would probably be investing him. Realistically, you're investing in him for 1 year. And it's low risk to the extent that you're not going to have to pay him a lot of money. And if he struggles, hell, by the end of the season, you could be playing McCarthy again. If he's brilliant, then you probably have to commit to him, and you say, we don't mind committing to him because of his age. There's no reason he can't be good for a while, and then at that point, maybe you decide on McCarthy, we're going to trade him, or you're just going to go another direction, or whatever the case may be. Maybe it's a size thing. I think his size is a problem. He just feels to me as if he's older than he is. And just now, is it maybe a new team? Might that refresh him? Is that maybe what he needs? Yes, that's possible, but I'm not particularly outstanding. I'm not particularly excited about him. If you tell me that the choices are either Murray or Geno Smith, I probably would take Murray. Because I can't get past what a texter said earlier, and he's right. Geno did resurrect his career from New York, right? He did. There's no question about that. But what did they ultimately decide in Seattle? We got to upgrade there. Nice job. We got to upgrade. And that was Darnold. And we'll see what Darnold does in his second year. I mean, maybe he'll cool off. I don't know. And again, he wasn't great, but he's good enough. And I just don't like getting another team's, we're going to be smarter than another team that just went to the Super Bowl. Really well-run organization that said, that's not good enough. He's okay. He's not bad. He's serviceable. Now, if you think McCarthy's going to be the starter from the start of the year, and you say, well, we just want a guy who, when he gets hurt, has a chance to help us win games in a way that several of the backups that we went to last year don't. I guess then you'd say he's definitely an upgrade over the backup quarterbacks that the Vikings used this last year. I don't deny that. But then to me, it feels more like where you're getting another backup, right? You're just getting another backup when I thought the whole idea was somebody that we think could challenge the incumbent QB immediately, almost immediately be plugged into that position, and might actually give you a chance to win enough games to make the playoffs.
So I've been doing some research on just the contract situations, because I keep seeing the text. You got $100 million in, Love and Parsons? How are the Packers not? How many Vikings right now? Well, I'm just going to tell you, are on rookie deals. 14. That's how many rookie deals.
14.
And names including Dallas Turner, Jordan Addison, McCarthy, Donovan Jackson. The Packers have 31 players on rookie deals.
Wow, that's...
And that all is purely on your ability to draft.
100%. And as we talked about earlier, that's what teams like the Kansas City Chiefs have historically been able to do. And it's almost like they have learned to get through the imbalance from a salary standpoint on the team, and that's the only way you can do it, is have that many guys on rookie contracts. You're 100% right. And, all the story has been told over and over again. If we've learned anything from the last few weeks, I think it's been confirmed that the general manager did not do his job very well. And again, I'm not going to pile on and blame him for all the quarterback dysfunction, because I don't think that's fair. I think KOC's got his fingerprints all over that. But when it comes to the draft, largely, that's got to be on the guy who's the general manager of the team, even on a team that it seemed like KOC had an outsized influence in the draft room a little bit. You still have to put that guy on the guy making the draft, who's got the final call on that, and the numbers speak for themselves. There just has not been enough success at all. All right, we're going to make this the top of the hour pause. I'm still holding on hope. Maybe we can get a minute or two with Blume. If not, we'll punt, and we'll get him on sometime down the road. 30 minutes yet to go. We got some more wild stuff to discuss. Maybe a little bit more on the Wolves. Do we have any final word yet on Anthony Edwards? Because he is now listed as of the top 5 at 5. He was listed as questionable tonight.
I know that Slow-Mo's going to play. That's that's the indication from the head coach.
Will he start? If Anthony doesn't go, probably not.
I think he said he'll play.
He'll play. All right, fair enough. All right, so if we're getting new info on Anthony Edwards, who was downgraded to questionable because of that ongoing chronic foot issue, we'll let you know. Wolves on the Timberwolves channel tonight, hosting the Memphis Grizzlies. The Wild on FM 100.3 The Fan tonight, and we're hosting, is it Tampa Bay? Tampa Bay tonight, and let's get a victory. Let's not belabor, let's not turn this losing streak into a Wagnerian opera.
Man.
You know what I would give to chat with the late, great Ron Rosenbaum or the late, great Joe Friedberg on a day like this, with what's going on in the courts in the Twin Cities. Oh, my God. I miss those guys so much each and every day. Not to mention the personal side of all of that. If you are heading to Target Center for Wolves Grizz, your troubles are over. Anthony Edwards upgraded again, will be available tonight. He'd been listed as questionable earlier in the afternoon with a foot issue that has kind of plagued him this season and has sidelined him for some games. The latest info is he is officially in for tonight, at least to start the game. Now, will the Wolves relax too much as a result of his availability? That's been known to happen. We'll see how that goes, but he is indeed available. Let me give you a quick hit regarding the update in the 4-day conflict now in the Middle East, because there are some significant developments that we need to discuss. U.S. embassies and diplomatic missions are taking the brunt of what's going on in response to the American and Israeli military offensive. A drone struck the parking lot of the U.S. consulate in Dubai. U.S. Embassy in Riyadh came under attack twice today, causing part of the roof to collapse, according to people familiar with the matter. This is according to a Wall Street Journal roundup. President Trump said Iran's military has been largely neutralized, including its Navy and Air Force. And he said the U.S. could start escorting tankers through the Strait of Hormuz, the strategic waterway where Iran warned it could begin attacking ships. Israel struck a building Iranian clerics used to choose the country's supreme leader. Iranian official media said the building had been evacuated. 6 U.S. troops have been killed thus far. Over 700 people have died in the U.S.-Israeli strikes on Iran, according to the Red Crescent. The State Department says it was getting charter flights and military aircrafts for American citizens who want to leave the Middle East. That warning has been sent out. President Trump has talked before about that the biggest wave is yet to come. Whether that's true or not, we don't know, because we've had various versions of the events as they have taken place. One of the stories I read earlier today regarding the drones is the concern that some of the Middle East countries may soon, to deal with the drones, some of them may quickly start running out of weaponry to neutralize. And that there's a concern that when it comes to drones, that might be the one Iranian strength where they could go a lot longer. And so there's concern that maybe you have to start, I guess, deciding when to use your defensive weaponry and when to save it for what might be more dangerous attack via missile from Iran as well. Now, maybe a lot of that has been taken out. I don't know. But the whole drone technology, which, as I understand it, the Ukrainians have been forced over a period of years to get inventive on and creative on regarding how you handle it, is a key issue to watch moving forward. I am beginning to think, we've had about 9 versions of why we attacked. And here's the question on the table. Is it possible that the number one reason was, as I have read, with the Israelis using a lot of our intelligence became aware that the Ayatollah was going to be meeting with other major dignitaries in a place that afforded the opportunity to take him out in a way that was highly unusual. And ultimately, the decision was, we're going to take advantage of that opportunity. If the president had just said that, this isn't a regime that's been evil for 47 years. We did want, given that opportunity, given the negotiations, according to him at least, we're not going very well. We're going to do what we finally have a chance to do. What would the acceptance level have been, rather than we've had about an ever shifting series of motivations for the approach that we have ultimately taken? Obviously, a lot more has happened since we took out Iran's top officials, a lot more. And what we heard in one case from Marco Rubio, was, well, we knew Israel was going to be doing this, and therefore we knew that there's going to be a response, so we wanted to get ahead of the response. Was that real or not? We had a discussion about that yesterday. There's a debate on that as well. I'm just wondering if just going straight ahead on what the impetus of this was at the start of it might have been a little bit clearer and a little bit easier for individuals to understand. We'll never know. The other mystery continues to be, although, the obvious question has been, well, if you run on a campaign of, we're tired of the neocons trying to run the world in terms of get us involved, our hardware involved, our body's involved. We're not interested in doing that anymore. We're not interested in nation building. That was largely what the president ran on. So the assumption was that he'd have some explaining to do to his own constituency based on this is contrary. This is the sort of aggressiveness that Trump fans hated in the rest of the Republican Party. They were repulsed by it, and now that's what's taken place. And yet, in the polls, I think there's a pretty good breakdown. I think among Democrats and independents, the polls heavily indicate no belief in the approach that the United States has taken here. But among, I think, hardcore Trump fans, I believe the polls indicate, I saw this on CNN earlier today, a belief that they endorse the approach or they're willing to accept that approach as well. It's a story that I'm very curious to see how it's going to go. And again, what is it possible we're heading for a stretch where there's likely to be more damage in several of these Middle East countries as they have to become more discriminating as to when they call out their best defensive equipment to deal with the drones if they're running out of drones. I should say if they're running out of defensive equipment to deal with exactly that. We will indeed have to see. Bradshaw and Bryant KFAN text line is open at 64686. We are hoping for a hotline phone call from Paul Blume. Did we get it? Did he just call? All right. Do we have time to take a quick break and come back, or what's the schedule? What do you think? And then just do a quick 5-minute hit with him on the other end?
I would say break.
Do it now.
Yeah.
We'll break now? Okay,
Yeah.
We'll break and see if we can get just a quick 5 minutes from Blume on whether there was any resolution on a very busy day in the courtroom. He's been covering it all day. Stay.
It's the Bumper to Bumper Show Wrap.
Brought to you by American Pressure.
All right, let's hit it quickly. Paul Blume, kind enough to call the hotline on a very, very busy day for him. Thank you, sir, for the time. Just a few minutes left, as you know.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at a tweet from you 26 minutes ago. Contempt under advisement. Judge Bryant has just wrapped up a grueling full-day hearing. He has taken all issues under advisement, did not issue any rulings, no timeline for his ruling. What does that mean exactly?
Well, we put in all day. We thought we'd get a ruling at the end of the day. He had called in Daniel Rosen. He had called the U.S. attorney. He put contempt on the table, even said this morning he was even considering imprisonment, a criminal contempt finding against Trump administration officials for continued violations of court orders. He took testimony. Daniel Rosen sworn in at one point on the witness stand. Rosen also made the government argument, so it was kind of an odd situation for the U.S. attorney. But in the end, the judge said he's just going to take everything he heard today under advisement and issue a written order some point down the road. He didn't put a timeline on it, but this specific case, again, we talked a lot about habeas petitions, civil litigation from Operation Metro Surge with more than 1,000 of these cases filed by detained immigrants that argued that their arrests were unconstitutional. And the bench, the district court judges, and the U.S. Attorney's Office, the Department of Justice, have been at odds over what the judges believe are continued violations of court orders. These cases, specifically in Judge Bryant's courtroom today, 28 of them we started with, they were all related to the returning of possessions, personal belongings to detained immigrants who were freed. So think cell phones, passports, visas, work permits, Minnesota state ID cards, that these judges, when they order the release of the immigrants, order the release of all belongings they were arrested with. And in, several dozen cases of Judge Bryant's, he had found that his orders to return those items immediately were violated. And today, this hearing brought all those together. And the thing started testy. It was feisty, Rosen on the defensive. And at the end of the day, 8 hours plus later, Judge Bryant says he'll consider everything and make his order in due time. All right, so we had previously some very strong commentary from the bench involving Judge Schultz, as I recall it. Right. So is that a completely different set of cases and circumstances? Is that at all connected to what is being examined here in Judge Bryant's courtroom? No, very interesting. Chief Judge Patrick Schiltz, Republican appointee, he brought to light more than 200 broad court order violations last week, in which he threatened again of Daniel Rosen that criminal contempt, meaning, behind bars, government officials being jailed for violations of court orders. So Judge Schiltz was speaking for the entire bench. I don't know specifically how many of these Judge Bryan cases fit into the now 200 plus that Judge Schiltz is alluding to. It does get confusing, but it was interesting because Daniel Rosen, the U.S. attorney, made that argument, in Judge Bryan's courtroom. He said, don't come here with your, beliefs and understanding of all the violations you think, ICE has violated over the last few months. We are in this courtroom for very specific issues related to personal belongings.
Right,
and when you get down to the individual cases, Dan, I got to say, some of the personal belongings, the government acknowledged it in 2 cases. They blatantly lost, the person's items. But, Daniel Rosen's like, that's a human mistake. That's not a contemptible issue. It was like, it came down to a shoelace that the detained immigrant was concerned about, that God forbid it ever ended up at a crime scene. His DNA might be on it. And you're just sitting in the courtroom. You're like, well, I don't know if the one shoelace in and of itself is contemptible. He argues he didn't get it back. He was arrested and he had a shoelace and it's gone now. And, several others, the driver's license wasn't, directly returned to the individual, but instead was at the front desk at the Whipple building. So it created an extra step. Is that a contemptible offense? Obviously, the judge will decide. Right. Different people have different opinions, but some of these were what I would describe as very small issues. But if Judge Bryan does look more at the totality of things, then all of a sudden, those contempt matters, I think, become more relevant.
How testy did it get when the judge was examining Rosen? Or asking questions of his?
Well, at the very beginning, Daniel Rosen really got on the defensive. They really went back and forth trying to establish the parameters for the rest of the day. Everybody calmed down at one point mid-morning. If you look back at my Twitter thread today, you'll see that there was the judge called the timeout and took a break, but he described that we got off, meaning the judge and the U.S. attorney, to a feisty and testy start. And it was frosty and it was intense. And the things calmed down once he was on the stand. I mean, they went back and forth a little bit throughout the day. Daniel Rosen firmly believes his office is doing everything it possibly can to comply with some court orders. His office takes issue. Some of these court orders are being issued like immediately. Right. And these things take hours. So, his position is they're going to miss a deadline or two. We're human beings. Just the paperwork process takes a little bit. But of course, the judges come at it with, I don't want to get into their heads, but they don't believe these immigrants writ large, 80+% of these habeas cases should even be detained at all. Right. So they're frustrated by the arrests. U.S. attorney doesn't necessarily speak for the entire Trump administration. They have very specific clients, very specific court orders they need to follow. And it comes down to, human beings in a courtroom. And Judge Bryan's going to have to make an ultimate decision whether to hold, a Daniel Rosen or a civil division chief in contempt of court, whether it's to send a message to the government at large or whether they firmly believe these human beings are responsible for some of these non-compliance or violation of court orders. So, fascinating to watch all day. But when I tell you that's a grueling day to sit in the federal courthouse or courtroom, it took a lot out of everybody in that courtroom.
I got to believe that's true. As I recall it, some of the stuff that Judge Schiltz either said or wrote was the larger belief that you make this decision to go as broad as you did, and you clearly did not have your regardless of us discussing the legitimacy of a lot of these the arrests, you did not have your ducks in a row. You did not have the people in place. You don't have the infrastructure in place to possibly do this in a way that as a judge, the judges in totality, believe that made it even possible that you could follow the law and do this in good fashion. That was a lot, as I recall, of what Judge Schiltz had to say previously.
Bingo. That was in his order, his unprecedented supplemental order that he filed last week. He says, he turned it on the government.
Right.
You made a plan to arrest thousands of individuals during Operation Metro Surge, but did not create the infrastructure to handle what was going to be an onslaught of litigation. And what started, a couple months ago, January, February, we were really talking about the release time, right? How long was it? Someone would be ordered release on January 15th, but it would be until January 20th till they could get the detained immigrant back up here from Texas or New Mexico or somewhere else. But now we've sort of, as Operation Metro Surge has wound down, we've now turned to sort of the bookkeeping matters. Like, okay, we're going to take your passport, we're going to take your wallet, we're going to take your driver's license. That's going to go into this bag, and that's going to continue, to follow you. But those items, get lost, they get misplaced. Somebody gets moved, but then released from somewhere else, and the items haven't caught up to them. So logistically, we've gone into the logistics, and that's what I think Judge Bryan was trying to get at today. And in fact, there was an ICE administrator, a deputy field ops director out of St. Paul, the operations center there, who had to testify today about what sort of policies are in place to make sure individuals' property stay with the individual. And clearly, the items were lost in two very obvious cases, including a guy who was released even without the footwear he was arrested with. He's missing his boots, his cell phone, his ID, his driver's license, his bank cards, everything that was in his wallet. So, the government argues that, look, we feel bad, we're sorry, it's not contemptible, but we'll certainly pay for your stuff, while the immigrants' attorneys are saying this is contemptible. This is a human being's life. You had no rationale for arresting him, and now here he is without all of his goods. And then again, that's kind of what unfolded today in the courtroom.
Great distillation. I appreciate you still finding time for us. I know that this has been a much busier and longer day than perhaps you even expected. Good to chat with you. We'll talk again. Thanks, man.
Yeah, thank you, Dan.
Always a pleasure. Paul Blume with great stuff on a busy day that in the courtroom that he was covering, and perhaps more yet to come regarding a ruling that actually did not, in this case, take place at the end of a marathon session in the courtroom. That's the music, meaning we're wrapping things up here. So the plan, again, I want to thank, first of all, an outstanding array of guests today. We had Lou Nanny at 4:30 this afternoon. We had Paul Blume at 5:30. We had some good bonus Kevin Seifert on what turned out to be yet another in an endless series of newsy days, potentially involving the Minnesota Vikings at 3:30. The whole show podcastable if you missed any part of it. Don't hesitate to get in via the podcast. Fan and a Man in the Air. And then it's Minnesota Wild Hockey on the Fan?
That's correct. Wild Hockey at 8:30.
That's late, though. You're right. Late start.
Timberwolves on the
Timberwolves channel,
iHeartRadio app.
That's the usual start, I think, at 7 o'clock. Guardsy is in for me tomorrow. I'm back on Thursday. Enjoy the rest of your evening. I'll talk to you on Thursday at 3.
I'll be there.